Sisters of Dorley by Alyson Greaves. Read by Robin Nolan. Chapter 14. The Sense God Gave Her. Content warning for this episode: mentions of rape and abuse. 2019, November 9th, Saturday. Declan gets tased. Stefan doesn't. He wonders as Declan's face spasms as his legs fall out from under him as he crashes to the floor by Stefan's feet, momentum carrying him far past the point of bodily sensibility, if he owed such favouritism to Pippa and perhaps Christine, or if the sponsors heard what Declan was saying and decided that, of the two of them, Declan is by far the most objectionable. Stefan, following the quartet of women who are carrying the unconscious man back to the cells, can't get it out of his head. The fucker revelled in the power he had over that woman. Not just his physical power either. She kept coming back to him again and again, caught in a cycle of moving out when he abused her and moving back in when he put on sufficient charm, when he persuaded her this time that he'd changed. Repulsive. Stefan's never wanted so much to hurt someone. It's not a pleasant feeling. He doesn't even look up as Maria places him in his cell. It takes him several minutes he spends getting his heartbeat back under control, breathing slowly until his pulse stops thumping against his temples, gripping the edge of the awful little cot so tight he thinks his fingers might bruise. To realize she left the door open. Pippa's there, watching him. For how long? "You okay?" she says, and her tone suggests she's asked him more than once already. She's flushed all the way up to her bleached hair like she's just run a marathon, or she's been crying. Her voice has that delicate lilt some people get when they're trying not to strain it after pushing it too hard. Stefan wonders if that still applies for someone who's had as much voice training as Pippa's had. Maybe it goes double. He remembers hearing shouting, now that he thinks about it, down the corridor, not directed at him. "I'm okay," he says. He lets go of the edge of the cot, flexes his fingers, winces as the pain from the base of his right hand reminds him of his mistake. "I think I almost broke my thumb," he adds, holding it aloft. "Did you hit him with your thumb inside your fist?" "Yeah, that's not how you throw a punch." "First time." Pippa holds out a hand, her left, to take his and pull him up off the cot without hurting him more than his inexperience already has. He accepts it and wobbles a little as he finds his feet again. Never had an adrenaline rush like that. Never had a come down like this. "Come on," Pippa says, tugging on his wrist. "Let's get you back to your room." "No punishment?" She yanks on him again, so he follows. "Not from me. He deserved that, and 10 times more." He looks to the right as they walk down the main corridor. In the common room, locked, red LEDs on the doors. Aaron, loitering, obviously trying to find out what's happening so he can relay it back to the rest of them, grins and gives him a thumbs up, pressing his hands against the glass. Stefan reaches out and touches the glass as he passes, returns Aaron's smile. "You okay?" Aaron mouths, comically over-enunciating. Stefan nods. He doesn't know if he is or not, but there's no sense in having Aaron worry. At least Declan's back in his cell. No more danger. Aaron mouths something else, but it's too complex a sentence and Stefan is no lip reader, so he just shrugs, points to Pippa, still dragging on his other arm, and leaves the boy to it. They can catch up later. In his room, he collapses into the bed, having staggered the last couple of steps as the last of his energy drained. One punch took a lot more out of him than he expected. Pippa closes the door behind them, pulls up the chair and drops onto it, slumping forward immediately, elbows on her knees, hands supporting her chin. "What a day," she says. "Are you okay?" Stefan asks. She's still red, although it's faded a bit. She's so pale now that even the slightest hint of colour dominates her face. "I'm supposed to be..." "I'm your sponsor. Your authority figure." "Pippa, yes, I know, we ran the video for him. In the cell. Playing back what he said before you hit him. Over and over again, and I had to listen to it. Over and over again. It brought back a lot of memories, you know? Bad ones." Stefan shoves himself up painfully. Now the adrenaline's spent, he feels sore and overworked. A machine without oil. It's worth the effort, though, to move closer to Pippa, hold out his left hand the way she did in the cell, to offer something for her to take if she wants to. "You can talk about it," he says, "if that would help." Pippa sniffs grotesquely and reaches out to grip his fingers. She hooks hers into his, not so much holding hands, but creating a reinforcing bridge between them. The one they've both slowly built over the past 2 weeks. I have a cousin, she says. It's quiet, steady, talking almost to herself. 3 years older than me. We were always close. She made this, actually. It's one of a pair. She reaches over with a finger and spins the bracelet around the wrist locked in Stefan's grip. She always took care of me. Even when things got bad, she'd be there for me, to calm me down, to talk me through it. It all ended when she met a man a bit too much like Declan. She pauses for a while, chews on her lip, flexes the fingers connected to Stefan, testing their link. He waits. She doesn't need his contributions, just perhaps his presence. Some men have a way of making themselves a woman's whole world, and some women are vulnerable to it. My cousin, Sarah, she was definitely vulnerable to it. He was her first, and he used that to control her, to make her think that if he left, she'd never find someone else. He hit her, and she didn't leave. Wouldn't leave. She shifts in the chair, moving her weight around, looking for comfort, finding none. He took her away from us a little at a time, away from me. First, I got to see her only at the weekends, and then once a month, maybe. And then when I did see her, she was different, reduced, less and less of herself every time, and she would have bruises. I'm so sorry, Pip, Stefan whispers, and she tightens her fingers in his. It was all so stupidly predictable, she says. We all saw him coming, even me. He got angry at the slightest thing. A horrifying mirror for me, actually, though I didn't realize that until much later. But we all tried to tell her. Me, my dad, her mum. We all tried. And Sarah, she'd say it's only when he's had too much to drink, or he's trying to change for me, or you don't understand him, but I do because I love him. She clenches her fingers. Stefan feels her nails dig into the skin, welcomes them. One day, she continues, she texted me. She said she was going to leave, but she didn't. Took us almost a week to find out why. Dad found out in the end. Her boyfriend, he raped her, found her trying to leave, trapped her, hurt her, and when my dad beat him to the hospital, Sarah took his side, testified against my dad. Prison for 6 months. She rubs at her eyes with her free hand, her ever-present eye makeup a wreck. All for a monster who took advantage of her kindness and her naivete and her terror of being alone. A monster who hurt her and hurt her and hurt her because he never cared enough to stop. A monster we all saw coming. Is she okay now? I don't know, she says. Too loud, too raw. She moved away with him. Left me all alone. Left me with no one. Left me to find out I was 17 and I had no real friends. Do you know how lonely you get when someone you're that close to just leaves? You find out that you don't know how to function without them. You don't know how to talk to people. You barely know how to live. And if you're like me, you get angry a lot. Without her there, it gets out. She shakes her head, terminating the memories. So I came here. Started fresh. Now I sponsor. Terribly, apparently. You're doing great, really. She looks at him and smiles. I still don't know what you did to end up in here, Steph, she says, freezing his heart for a moment before she continues. But it doesn't matter. I know you're not like him. At this point, I think that's all I need to know. She keeps smiling at him, looking for someone in him that he hopes he can be for her. And he leans forward, using their entwined fingers to pull her closer, slowly, making a request out of it. One she answers by matching him, stepping off the chair and onto the mattress next to him. As they embrace, as he holds her, as she leans his shoulder on his shoulder and cries gently, he thinks he can see her whole life. A troubled girl, closer with her cousin than anyone else, left suddenly alone, seeks a new start, leaves home for saints, and loses control of the anger her cousin helped her manage. Takes out her misery on someone or something she shouldn't and gets picked up by Dorley, and wears around her wrist every day the remembrance of her cousin, her grief. Stefan grieves too, for the person she might have been. The person she might have been had she been given the chance to heal without being taken and changed against her will. Pippa pulls away, borrows a tissue, dabs her eyes and grimaces at the dark makeup left behind, and Stefan has to make himself remember that this imagined younger Pippa is not in fact a girl, because she wasn't always like this. That younger, broken, angry Pippa was a boy whose name he'll never know, and whose path to redemption was decided for him by someone else. Baffling, still, because she seems so complete, but fragile today. The cracks showing on traumas that whatever happened to her here never quite healed. Fuck Declan for triggering her memories. When he washes out, which he probably will, Stefan hopes it fucking hurts. Steph? Pippa says. Oh, he says, sorry. I got caught up in my head for a second there. I know. She taps him on the head with a free hand. Know exactly what that looks like on you. If you're back in the land of the living. She pauses and he nods. I asked if it's okay if I stay here a little while. Sure, he says, and they separate. Pippa finishes wiping her face, using some of his moisturizer as makeshift makeup remover. Stefan distributes pillows around so they can sit in their usual position, propped up against the wall, facing the computer. What was that movie you were talking about? Legally Blonde, Pippa says. Without her makeup on, she looks strangely young. That might be why she wears it so heavily. That's the one. It's a classic, so show me. She finds energy for the first time since she came in, and grabs his phone off the bedside table before swinging it back onto the mattress next to him. She sits closer than usual, shifting her pillow along, and scrolls through the movie list on the phone. When she starts the movie, she folds her arms around her belly, but her elbow touches Stefan's, and he makes sure to maintain the contact. The movie is ridiculous and fun, and laughing together helps them both. About an hour in, she pauses it, in need of a toilet break. She locks down all the other basement doors so she can use the basement bathroom without one of the boys walking in on her. Come with me, she says. Are you sure? I feel kind of antsy being down here alone, even with all the doors locked. I know the feeling. She takes his hand and leads him out of the room and down the corridor. Stefan has the strangest feeling like he's being conspired with, like they're two kids sneaking down to steal cookies from the kitchen in a vintage newspaper comic strip. In the bathroom, he leans against the wall that backs into the shower annex while she closes herself in a cubicle and sits down. Thanks for this, Steph, she says, echoing a little. No problem. I feel stupid for letting him get to me like that. Declan, I mean. I get it, Stefan says. I mean, not in the same way, but he set something off in me. Like I said, I've never hit anyone before. She laughs. You are the least toxic person we've ever had down here, I swear. Hey, what's going to happen to Declan? I don't actually know. At the very least, he'll be kept in the cell for the time being. He's been nothing but trouble since he got here, and your safety will be valued considerably higher than his freedom. She coughs delicately. His relative freedom, anyway. That's a relief. We were making these ridiculous plans to stay together all the time in case he followed up on his threats. We'd even piss as a group. I wasn't looking forward to getting up every 45 minutes so Will can drain the snake. For such a big boy, he had such a small bladder. Pippa flushes the toilet. When did you make this plan? She asks, emerging from a stall a minute or so later. Earlier on in my room, after Declan made his entrance. We were all crammed in there like sardines to strategize. And get yelled at by Aaron, actually. Who did? Will? Me. Apparently I've been pushing him too hard about his dick pics. Pippa doesn't say anything until she's finished washing and drying her hands. Listen, Steph, she says, playing with her bracelet again. Can we finish the movie another time? I need to check in with Aunt Maria and Aunt B. Get the whole post-debacle debrief. Oh, yeah, sure. She steps forward, takes his hand again. Thanks again, Steph, for helping me. I really needed it. And yes, I know I should have been helping you, but no problem. He repeats with a smile and squeezes her hand. She returns both gestures and turns and skips out of the bathroom in an obvious hurry. Back in his room, Stefan closes down the movie player, puts on some quiet music and lies down, closing his eyes and letting his mind go blank. He's okay. Pip is okay. Declan's in the cell again. It's all over. Normality, or whatever passes for normality down here, can return at its own pace. It takes 3 cups of tea. Christine goes with Paige to make the second and the third, unable to stomach the thought of leaving her side, and stands on the other side of the second floor kitchen, looking out of the woods while the kettle boils. The November cold has set in and the trees are brittle. By the third cup, they're standing closer together. There's a lot of ground to cover, a lot of explaining to do. Paige wouldn't initially move from her position by the door, a position from which she could bolt if needed to, and cradle that first mug of tea as if it was her only source of heat. Eventually, as Christine's story continued, Paige consented to move to the sofa to sit next to her. For a moment, Christine remembers Paige before she was Paige. Scared, angry, far too thin, and ready to batter down any obstacle in front of her, no matter the consequences. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," she whispers. Paige takes her both hands in hers and shows her a smile that might shatter, and that's all the reply Christine needs. She cries, falls into Paige, forces her to catch her. She knows it's her fault, that it's Paige who deserves the comfort, but the weight of her mistakes has fallen on her and it's impossible not to collapse under it. In Paige's arms, she shakes. After a while, fingers tangle in her hair, and Paige begins to carefully and slowly run her hands from Christine's temple to the back of her neck, smoothing out the locks, with every stroke thawing the fear that's kept Christine frozen in place. Eventually, her tears dry, but when Paige hooks her fingers back under her neck so she can draw Christine back, meet her eyes and kiss her forehead twice, Christine weeps anew. She hasn't lost her. "Paige," she says, her voice unsteady and wet. "Christine," Paige says, "it's okay." "It is? I won't say I'm not hurt. But if there's one thing I don't ever want, is to lose you again." Christine squeaks Paige's name and dives back into her. She makes the only promise she can under the circumstances. She'll never again be so stupid, and Paige will never lose her again. Their third mugs are stillborn by the time they retreat from their embrace, and Paige takes a heavy drink from hers, deliberately puncturing the gravity of the moment with appalling slurping sounds and making Christine laugh. "God," Christine says, "I feel like this is my first chance in a month to catch my breath. Between Steph, Aunt B, makeup practice, schoolwork, shopping, clubbing, it's been non-stop. And that's not an excuse for not telling you," she adds quickly. "It's just, I know. Don't forget how well I know you." Paige grins, her slightly elongated canines cheekily resting on her lower lip. "You don't plan. You react. And with Abby barely around, you've been reacting on your own every time." She tucks a finger under Christine's chin. "But you're not on your own anymore. No more rash decisions, okay?" "Okay," Christine says, feeling the pressure of Paige's finger against her jaw. "And no more lies. No more lies." Paige nods, sets down her empty mug, and draws Christine into her, wrapping long, lithe arms around her shoulders. "I love you, Christine," Paige says, and Christine has a moment to realize it's the first time either of them has said it this way before she answers in kind. Instinctively, finding it obvious, putting all her apologies and all her love into every little prayer she whispers into Paige's hair. Eventually, Paige releases the tension in her arms, prompting Christine to draw away, each of them stealing kisses before they fall out of reach, collapsing into the cushions on opposite ends of the sofa, tired, still holding hands. They sit together for a while, reconnecting, Christine mostly staying quiet, not wanting to intrude on Paige's thoughts. She'll be sifting through the emotions raised in her today for a while yet. Paige isn't good with feeling abandoned or isolated, not after her parents, not after a week locked in her room, not after Christine last year left her for stupid reasons. Another wound on a girl more delicate than she makes herself seem. So she lets her set the pace, gives her the time she needs, and holds in the voice that scolds her over and over for hurting Paige again, for almost ruining the best thing ever to happen to her again. She's almost succumbed to her exhaustion and falling asleep just when Paige stirs. "Just when I think this place can't get any weirder," Christine takes the cue. "Rule 1, this place will always get weirder. That's why I don't bother adjusting to any new normals anymore." "Wise," Paige sits forward. "Show me. I want to see what you can do. Show me how to break into our systems, the cameras and everything. Oh, Christine says. Yeah, definitely. She sets up the laptop on top of the beanbag chair, drags it in front of the sofa so they can both see the screen without contorting themselves, and walks Paige through the software she's cobbled together. As she goes through the basement cameras, she drops in on Steph, who appears to be napping, and thus tackling Declan's return with more aplomb than Christine expected. Can't believe we finally hooked a girl, Paige says, peering at Steph. At least someone who knows she's a girl already, she adds, grinning, and not just a painfully obvious uncracked egg like Vicky. A real-life, self-aware trans girl. What's she going to think of us when she moves upstairs? Actually, Christine says with a shrug, she's already told me, she preens. I'm surprisingly normal. She must not know you that well then. Paige leans over, kisses Christine delicately on the temple. You were the furthest thing from normal. That's your appeal. I have an appeal? Don't push it, Paige says, nudging Christine with her elbow. You're also cute, but you're not that cute. Christine pushes it. I'm not cute? Paige giggles, pulls her in, kisses her again. Fine, you're adorable. Christine nuzzles her back, and then remembers, oh, it's he, by the way, for Steph. She prefers he, for now, just in case you ever meet her. Him, fuck, that's weird. Right? Shoes on the other foot at last, she says. Shoes on the other foot at last, Paige says. Remember all your pronoun confusion back then? This is the universe getting back at you for all those times you forgot and misgendered Vicky. Christine snorts. At least she stopped kicking me. I was worried I'd have a permanent limp before we even got out of the basement. I asked her to. Oh? I knew you weren't being malicious, just slow. Thanks, Paige. On the screen, Steph sleeps. It's good to see him calm and untroubled, even if he has to be unconscious. I'm glad we're getting to do this, Paige says. We should help more trans people. Preaching to the choir, Christine says, taking control again and flipping through the basement cameras, trying to get up to speed. Wait, that's weird. Huh, Declan's back in a cell. He was out, right? Monica made a big fuss. Pippa panicked. He was definitely out. Paige hovers her fingers over the trackpad. Mind if I... Christine nods and she gets out of the way. Paige starts flipping through cameras with far more expertise for someone who's only been exposed to a few minutes to Christine's janky home-built software she should be able to manage. Where's Pip? Paige mutters to herself, and she goes through the cameras on the above-ground floors until she finds her. Pip is in the office, which is, apart from her, as empty as Christine would expect on a random Saturday afternoon. She's cross-legged on the floor next to an open filing cabinet, referencing something on her phone against a file which she has open on her knees, running a finger down the printed text and whispering to herself, too quiet for the microphone to pick up. That's not good, Paige says, fighting against a sudden shortness of breath for the third time today. The archives contain the original, largely non-redacted records on all Dorley graduates. The information is considered important to have on file somewhere, but best not left lying around on an easily accessible server. Aunt B decided long ago, when she started using the girls as sponsors, that she didn't want them to be able to look up each other's pre-Dorley history on their laptops every time one of them irritated another at the breakfast table. There's nothing in there on Steph or any of the boys that Pippa doesn't already have access to on a phone or a laptop from the comfort of her own bed, which means she's looking for information on a graduate. She's looking into Melissa. Steph must have slipped up somehow, revealed too much information on one of the cozy movie nights. Shit. Is there a way to zoom in? It's an optical zoom, Christine explains, balling her hand to her fist. And an old camera. She hears the motor and knows someone's watching her. Maybe we should. Wait, Paige interrupts herself. She's getting up. They watch on the screen as Pippa lays out a few sheets of paper from the file, takes pictures with her phone and puts everything back in its proper place, and marches back out of the room. Paige follows Pippa around the building with the cameras, and Christine leans against her, borrowing some of her body heat and forcing her breath into her lungs, one heave at a time. Why can't things just be normal for one day? Pippa wakes him up from a dreamless sleep by sitting down heavily on the end of his bed and startling him back to consciousness. She throws her phone, unlocked and showing a paused video file, on the mattress next to him. He blinks a few times, wishing for coffee or possibly something to hide behind. Pippa's face is rock still, and he's seen her kick walls and hit tables when she gets like this, until he starts getting his focus back. Who are you really, Stefan? She says, and he shakes his head, pretending not to understand the question, buying himself a little more time. He picks up the phone, squints at the screen, and drops it back into the bed as he pushes up on his elbows, discards the sheets, and disentangles himself, ready to run should he need to. The question of where enters his head, but he ignores it, one problem at a time. You said she made a plan with the other boys, Pippa says. And might not be much of a sponsor, but if 4 of you are doing things like meeting in a bedroom and making plans, it feels like something someone might need to know about. And I figured it was better that I looked into it first rather than have someone who doesn't know you and doesn't care about you stumble over the footage in the archive review. Because if you say something you shouldn't and it's something I can protect you from, then that's something I want to do. So I looked and I heard that. She nods at the phone. Stefan looks at it properly for the first time. The video is frozen on a top-down view of his room. Early that day, with him, Aaron, Will, and Adam packed in. He's paused in the act of saying something, as difficult to look at as ever. He decides to look at Aaron instead. Fear clogs his throat. What could any of them have possibly said to upset Pippa so much? She reaches out and taps the screen. The emotion we call friendship is queer or something. I've not been as close to anyone since Russ or Melissa. Oh shit, are we finally getting your tragic backstory? No, not. Another couple of taps to rewind the footage and show it again. 3 times before she scoops up her phone and drops it into her bag. Russ and Melissa, she says. Russ and Melissa, Steph. I know, he says, making sure his arms are free in front of him in case he needs to defend himself. Her shoulders are rising and falling too fast as she takes quick, short breaths. I heard. You have 30 seconds to tell me how you know Melissa, or I'm taking this straight to Aunt B. She's speaking levelly, but every so often her control wobbles and a word hisses out through clenched teeth. He's never seen her like this. He swings his legs out of bed, rests his hands in his lap. I followed her here, he says, telling as little the truth as he thinks he can get away with. It's not just his future on the line, but Christine's too. To St. Armsworth, not to Dorley. If you knew we're connected, then you know we were close. She disappeared when I was young, and I never believed she was dead, the way everyone else did. I was convinced that if I came here, I attended Saints, I might be able to find out what happened to her, but I never did. I got depressed, started behaving badly. Steph, Pippa says, looking right through him, hearing him but not seeing him. Stop lying. I'm not. Pippa punches the mattress, making Stefan jump. Her name wasn't always Melissa, and you fucking know it. She whips her head around. I know you knew her before she was Melissa, from our file. Your name shows up in there as much as her own brother's. But he vanished from your life, so how do you know her? She emphasizes the pronoun by slapping the mattress again. He works his mouth uselessly, silently swallowing down the rushing in his ears. That was probably the worst mistake he could have made. He is too used to thinking of Melissa as Melissa. A favourite phrase of his mother's drops into his head, engaged brain before opening mouth, and of his father's, stupid boy. I know, he says, editing his story again. I'm sorry, I just got very used to thinking of her that way. Years ago, I saw her out near the supermarket. She recognized me, and I recognized her. She dropped her debit card, I picked it up, and I saw her name. I was never completely sure she was the same person as Mark, but it was better than believing he was dead. What are you saying? Pippa says, her eyes focusing on him again at last. Abby said some of the people who live upstairs have been treated here. Not here, not the girls anyway, but she was in the program, and that's when I finally put it together that Melissa really was Mark. She had a difficult transition, came here for treatment, and shut up! Pippa yells, throwing her bag across the room, switching so quickly from stillness to violence that Stefan hiccups in surprise. She stands, fists clenched by her sides, quivering with rage, a wire of uncoiled energy with nowhere to strike. You keep lying. I can see it in your eyes. You're panicking, trying to find a version of the story that will make me go away. Jesus, Steph. She kicks out the chair, knocks it over, and starts pacing the tiny area of the floor between the door and the bed. I thought we were close, Steph. I thought we were friends. It comes out before he can stop it. Then why do you keep lying to me about the injections? He shouts. Pippa freezes. Stefan too, stupid boy. What do you mean? Pippa says, quietly, slowly, almost inaudibly. Stefan reaches up with a stiff hand and presses hard on his chest, massaging movement back to his body. There's obviously no point in continuing the charade any longer. She already has more than enough information, one way or the other, to get the truth, or something close to it, with or without him. And if he tells her now, himself, in his own words, he at least has a chance of regaining some of her trust. I know about the estradiol, Pippa. She doesn't say anything. Doesn't move. It's in what you say, what you've been told to say as a vitamin injection. Once a week. It works with the implant in the stomach, which will move us off before too long. What else do you know? I know how you move us off the implant. Pippa, a marionette with her string cut, almost staggers as she falls towards the bed. Stefan intercepts her, helps her sit, piles cushions behind her, gently lowers her until her head and neck are supported. You know everything, she whispers. More or less. And when you say what you know comes after the implants, you mean the orchy? It's not a question. Yes. I didn't know how I was going to deal with that, Pippa says, glassy-eyed. I didn't know how I was going to send you into that room knowing what's going to happen to you. Stefan takes a risk. He holds her hand. She grips it like a life preserver. It's okay. It's not okay. It's barbaric. You survived it? She sits halfway up, stares at him, and her energy leaves her and she falls again. Jesus. You really do know everything. Look, he says, Pippa, you don't have to worry about that for me. He finds himself smiling. It's different coming out to her. He's had weeks to think about it, weeks to be certain that, finally, he knows himself. And Pippa's not a near stranger like Christine was in those early days. She's his friend. Truth is, I really did seek out this place because of what happened to my childhood best friend. She became Melissa. I wanted that for myself too. I needed it. I'm transgender, Pippa. I'm a girl. Or I should be. It's like she forgets how to breathe for a moment. She can't take her eyes off him, and stills completely, only for a movement in her knuckles to grip on as her grip on the sheets tightens. This isn't a joke, is it? She whispers. No. Laughter bursts out of her like a firecracker. She rolls over, wraps herself suddenly around him, and encloses him with her whole body, all her energy now directed into holding him tight the way Abby did, the way no one else really has for a long time. Steph, she says, pulling away, cheeks flush, hysterical. You're a girl. My goodness, Steph. Wow. God, Steph, what the hell? You're a flipping girl. He says. Yep, he says, shrugging. You could have told me. I'm sorry about that. No, it's okay. I understand why you didn't. She rolls onto her back again and empties her lungs with a long, coarse, descending whistle. Wait, you didn't tell anyone about this place, did you? No, no one. Good, because that was a scary thought. I had sudden visions of police showing up, all of us being dragged away in cuffs. I wouldn't do that to you, even if I don't exactly agree with what happens here. It's worth it at the end. So I keep hearing. I don't understand, though, Pippa says slowly, cracking her knuckles and resting her hands on her stomach, looking for a moment like a corpse prepared for a funeral, still too pale. How did you find out about this place? I mean, I guess you staged a thing outside with the girl screaming and you passing out in the flower bed, but who was she? Steph, if you have an accomplice, we need to know before he's safe from having to think of a new lie, a new way to keep Christine out of it, by the whistling of the speaker set into the strip above the door. What? Pippa has time to say. Christine's voice, a whisper loud enough to fill the room, says, Pippa, it was me. Christine hasn't been back up to the roof since the night she met Nalia and Ren, who are both now staples of Vicky and Lorna's social group and joining the clamour for Christine for one day to play Bloodborne, if only because Nalia thinks Eileen the Crow is hot, and it was much warmer then. She shivers inside her jacket and wishes for the wisdom of Paige, who pulled on a calf-length woolly cardigan and a blazer and still looks amazing. Christine, inside her huge puffy coat, looks like an M&M's mascot and is still cold. She did little talking in the end. Her intervention gave Steph permission to tell the whole of the truth, and so he did, in detail, holding Pippa's hand and laughing with her about some of the sillier parts, skipping over the bits where Pippa was personally unpleasant to him. When he was done, Pippa thanked him, nodded up at the camera, and left. They tracked her through the building on cameras, and when it became clear she was headed for the roof, they followed. at speed. Pip is not leaning dramatically over the railing, as Christine feared. She's not even near the edge. A week ago, the 5th floor pulled a party up here and left a tarp spread over the central gravel garden and an assortment of old couches. Pip has pulled the clear plastic off one of them, and she's idly playing with a loose thread on its arm, staring at nothing in particular. Paige gives Christine's hand a final squeeze and before they uncouple, and gives Pippa the spare coat she bought. Wordlessly, Pippa accepts it, struggles into it without getting up, and slumps back into the cushions. Paige sits next to her. Christine, not wanting to crowd her, sits cross-legged on the couch opposite, not even bothering to remove the plastic cover. The roof is empty and lacks microphones, so they have more privacy here than anywhere else in the hall. "Hi," Christine says. Pippa turns red eyes on her. "You know," she says, "I'm almost too relieved about Steph to be angry at you." Almost. She's not going to be mutilated. She's going to be saved. And, she adds, rolling her eyes, "Yes, I know that's the point. All of us were saved. But she wants it. She needs it. This might," she coughs with her voice straining against a dry throat, "actually be a good year for me. I get to do something unequivocally good. Not just good with an asterisk like I expected." "Good with an asterisk is still good," Paige says. "Pretty flipping big asterisk, though," Pippa says. "True." "Pippa," Christine starts. "No, I still want to say my bit. You lied to me, Christine. All that stuff for the letters, the manipulation, I just had a great idea about how to deal with Steph thing. And that's not even why I'm angry at you. I'm angry at you, really, because you made me think I was your friend, Christine. You are my friend. Maybe that's how it turned out. Maybe that's how it will turn out. But give me some time, okay?" "Okay. I get it, though," Pippa says. "Steph is... I don't know. She makes me want to help her. Always did, ever since I stopped screwing my eyes shut to yell at her, trying my hardest not to see what was really there. So I understand why you did what you did, but just... time. Time. Of course. Much more generous reaction than Christine deserves, probably." Paige says, "Steph still likes to be called he." "I know," Pippa says. "I'm not doing that. I haven't told her yet, but it's my price. No self-pitying denial of your own gender, or I'll get really annoying." She smiles and rubs at the corner of her mouth where the skin on her lip has split. Without the guilt, without worrying I'm going to hurt her in a way that she can't handle. I'm free. She has no idea what she's unleashed. "A force of pure meddling," Paige says. "When we're alone together, she's going to be a she, and I'm going to make sure she knows it." "That's probably exactly what Steph needs," Christine says. "Damn right. And it all makes sense now," Pippa adds, rolling her head around the couch cushion and messing up her hair. "Even the way she's been bugging Aaron about his crap." "Think Steph is trying to beat us to it," Christine says. "Win a moral victory. Reform Aaron before we can turn him into a girl." "No, I mean, that might be a tiny part of it, but I've seen them together. In person, not just over the cameras. She likes him, and she can't stand having a friend with such a glaring moral blind spot, so she's been working on him, bit by bit. There might even be a bit of a breakthrough earlier today. Wow, go Steph." "We need a plan," Paige says, leaning forward on her knees and interposing herself between Christine and Pippa. "There are 4 of us who know now, including Abby, and we need to decide how to move forward." Christine says, nodding towards the door down to the dorms behind Paige and Pippa. "That might be a moot point." It's just swung open and spat out Maria, who frowns and hugs her belly as the cold air hits her. "Girls," Maria says as she approaches. Pippa and Paige twist in their seats to look at her. "Can you give me a few minutes alone with Christine, please?" Pippa's put some quiet music on, another one of Pippa's playlists, and is tapping at his phone, starting and restarting another diary entry to send up to Christine. He wonders how she's doing, now that her part in this has been laid completely bare to Pippa, warts and all, rather than the edited, sanitized version they supplied to Abby. Pippa, for all that she was happy to not to have to lie to him anymore, seemed pretty angry with her. He shrugs. Nothing he can do about it, except perhaps ask Pippa to give Christine a chance. She didn't ask for him to come barreling into her life, and he's demanded an awful lot of her. The music is obliterated by the sound of the noise of the lock cycling, and Stefan wastes a whole second panicking. Quickly, he pauses the song and throws his phone under the pillow when he wonders who it could be. Even Maria knocks before she comes in these days. Perhaps it's Monica or one of Adam or Will's sponsors. No, it's much worse. Beatrice, custodian of Dorley Hall and the woman ultimately with the power of life or death over him and almost everyone else he knows, enters with grace and poise, taking up position between the door and the bed, arms folded over her chest, blocking the exit. She lets the silence roll out until it threatens to suffocate him and then says with a pleasant but deliberately neutral tone, "Hello again, Stefan. Would you perhaps prefer Stephanie?" Yeah, okay, now it's over. Her voice reminds him of Pippa's when she's angry. It's too level, too controlled. "Just Steph is fine," he says, struggling to speak through a throat suddenly thickened by fear. Beatrice hooks the chair with a foot and drags it over, sits daintily on it, still positioned such that Stefan, should he wish to leave, would have to go straight through her and would not be able to open the door without first moving her. "Well then, Steph." She says his preferred name with the manner of a waiter suggesting the best and most expensive item on the menu. "I've had the most intriguing evening. Maria came to me with a problem. We've been used," she smiles. "What do you think we should do about that?" His breath freezes in his throat, and he tries to speak. He managed only a strangled, undignified noise. "A short while ago, Pippa, wonderful girl, very loyal, left your room and headed straight to the roof. Didn't even stop by her room to pick up a coat, and it is such a cold evening. Unusual behavior, to say the least, so naturally, she looked into it, first by searching through camera footage, and then by discussing it with her directly. And you know what we discovered? One might term it a conspiracy between you and Christine to hide it from..." "Please," Stefan says, forcing the words out. "This isn't Christine's fault. Don't punish her." "Relax, child. Christine might well have been running right under my nose for the past month, lying and scheming and making an enormous mess that she will, I guarantee, be required to clean up, but she appears to have acted entirely out of compassion and concern. She protected this house, protected this program, and even tried to protect you from yourself. Her most major mistake is that she didn't come to me immediately, but I can understand that. I'm told, rather intimidating sometimes. Frankly, I'm quite proud of her, so don't worry about Christine." She smiles her quick, predatory smile again. "Worry about yourself." He coughs when he tries to speak, and Beatrice rolls her eyes. "For goodness sake," she mutters and pulls a bottle of water out of her bag and throws it onto the mattress next to Stefan. "I am not that scary. Drink. I haven't come here to punish you either." She rolls her eyes at his confusion. Yes, I'm upset with you, Steph, obviously, but we can help each other as long as you abide by the new rules. Drink." Stefan obeys, almost unable to feel the lukewarm water in his throat. "What new rules?" "Now," Beatrice says, settling back onto the chair, making herself look somehow comfortable and relaxed from the horrible, rattly thing. "Before we get to the point, you need to understand something of how the program works. It works because we, all of us, believe in it. We get up every morning and go to bed every night secure in the knowledge the suffering we inflict is temporary, that it is all for a purpose, that we, ultimately, are helping those we appear superficially to be hurting. If we didn't believe in the work, we could not continue. Nevertheless, it is work, and it is difficult, especially for thoughtful young women like Pippa, who do not relish the hardships we must visit on the young people in our care. I understand you are au fait with our methods. Then you are aware that not long in the future, you and the other boys will undergo orchiectomies? Good. I would like you to imagine how Pippa, sweet and kind Pippa, would feel escorting you into that room, knowing or believing she knows that you are ignorant of what is to come. I am not finished. Suddenly she's a teacher, scolding a disruptive child, and Stefan instinctively retreats farther into the pillows stacked up at the end of his bed. Every hour she has spent in your company has been colored by the knowledge that she has had to lie to you, to maintain your ignorance, so that your reform can proceed in the manner that it should. And that means sleepless nights, stressful days, endless worries about how you will respond to the treatments. It is a considerable burden, and she took it up for you. You understand this, yes? Then how dare you inflict that suffering upon her with no purpose? I didn't want to, Stefan yells, finding the tiniest crack between sentences. I was trying to be her friend. For your own sake, you offloaded all the responsibility for your life, your transition onto her. You didn't even marshal the grace or sense that God gave you to tell her the truth. That is supremely selfish. Screw it. I'm selfish, Stefan says, gathering himself, pushing up out of the pillows. I'm selfish. You are sitting on the motherlode of boutique transition services and you're hoarding them all for your awful little pet project. Do you know how many trans women will kill for this? Do you know how many have died for the lack of it? Yes, she yells, pauses, finger raised, reconsidering the anger vanishing from her face. Yes, she repeats, and sits delicately back on the chair. Of course I do. Steph, I'm sorry for shouting. Stefan says, unable to keep up with Beatrice's rapidly switching mood. What's happening here? I'm sure we look selfish to you, Beatrice says, sounding almost wistful, but there are reasons. I expected you to have intuited them. Dorley Hall has a history and an awful lot of graduates. For the most part, they've melted seamlessly back into the world from which they were taken, but they all share a common point of origin. This house. Our shared vulnerable point, and I would deeply love to provide our care to those who request it as well as require it. I inherited a responsibility when I took over this house. A responsibility to everyone who passes through our doors to protect their new lives and keep their old secrets. It is an unfortunate reality of transgender medical care in this country that any facility which falls outside the jurisdiction of the NHS comes under sustained and hostile investigation. That can't be true. Ask Pippa to look it up for you, or do it yourself. When we remove the restrictions on your computer, we can give you lists of names, providers of private transgender medical care who have been hounded. It is an inevitability for those who would follow that calling. If one of the cockroaches who scurry around the centralized mental health system doesn't report you, then one of the professional busybodies who comprise most of our national press will run a piece on you for pennies. And before you know it, you're under investigation. I've seen it happen every time. She slaps her fist into the table with her open palm to emphasize each word. A new practice starts. 5 years, they last. 10 if they're extraordinarily clever or taking advantage of some loophole. And we can't withstand that type of scrutiny. Every one of us here would be exposed. Many would go to prison. I don't understand how you're still even here, Stefan says, if you're so vulnerable. Because we are a family, Steph. We take care of each other. We are reliant upon each other. Even those of us who leave and never return. We provide stipends, references, documentation, a complete new life, but one that has its foundations here, at Dorley Hall. If the hall falls, everyone falls with it. We are, I admit, a house of cards, but thus far we are a resilient one. Of course, it kind of makes sense. An interdependent group, all complicit, all made to start their lives over again from scratch, at Dorley, to find new family and new friends here and only here, and if you get it into your head to turn on the others, who do you have left? Forced feminization on the honor system. Stefan's still certain they could find ways to treat trans people at Dorley without risking the safety of existing graduates if they applied some of the effort and enthusiasm to the idea they currently reserve solely for growing breasts on unwilling men. But Beatrice is clearly unreceptive. She's had years, decades to stew in her own bullshit. The chances of him arguing her around are slim. But it's slowly sinking in that he's not actually doomed. She talked about new rules he'll have to follow, and this conversation has gone on far longer than it would have if she simply planned to wash him out. The realization is almost calming, and it means he'll have time to work on her, work on the others, make some suggestions here and there, improve things maybe. There is something he has to know though. Why? Why do this to men in the first place? She smiles. I admit it's unorthodox, and the series of events by which we came to it even more so, but it works. You've met countless examples of that, and it's necessary. No, he says, I don't accept that. Look at Pippa, right? She was just this lonely kid, struggling with loss and grief and immense family turmoil, but she makes one mistake, she gets kidnapped, gets slung down here. I can't bring myself to believe she deserved it. You know her so well, after a month. I think so. You don't even know what she did. It doesn't matter. You never gave her a chance to change. This was her chance, and she took it. Struggled with it, yes, for a while. A smile flickers across her face, and Stefan doesn't want to think about what she might be remembering. But she prevailed. But Christine, Beatrice says, counting on her fingers. Abigail, Monica, Eddie, Tabby, every sponsor you have met down here, all of them at one time were like Adam, William, or your Aaron. Some of them were even like Oliver, Raphael, or Martin. All of them reformed. All of them happy. They couldn't have been happy as men? I don't see how that matters. Stefan laughs bitter. I think it matters a lot. You think William's happiness mattered when he found out his younger brother was gay and beat him, when he subsequently took out his guilt on other students. You wanted to send him back there, out there to spiral, to hurt people, to find his happiness on the bodies of those weaker than him. But what about your Aaron? Did his happiness matter when he inflicted himself on women who barely knew him? He does regret that, Stefan protests. Right now he regrets it, but purely because you require it of him, and you are his only friend, and he's stuck down here with you. Do you think that your tinkering will last out there? It might. Beatrice laughs. She extracts another water bottle from her bag and takes a long drink from it, making a show of looking around the room. It won't. Are you familiar with Charlotte Church? Not one of yours. No. One of yours? Not one of ours. No, she's a singer. One from, I now realize, considerably before your time. Goodness, you all get younger every year. She sighs and blows a strand of hair out of her face. Charlotte Church is a Christian singer. She became famous in the 90s for her angelic voice and sweet manner. Famous enough that it was, for quite a time, difficult to relax in front of a television on a Sunday morning without encountering a mention of her. That's something we used to do, by the way. Switch on the television and watch whatever was put in front of us. I know it's hard for someone your age to understand. Yes, actually. Charlotte Church was 11 when she made her debut, and she became a constant presence in the media, a mascot for chaste, Christian, and very, very white innocence. And then, 4 years later, when she was 15, our largest national newspaper published a huge photograph of her, taken from an angle that emphasized her chest and said above the headline, "She's a big girl now." That's disgusting. Precisely. Here was a girl, 15 years old, known to us all since she was 11, and the publishers of our largest newspaper were so eager to post pictures of her developing bosom they were unable to make themselves wait until she was an adult. That is the environment in which we all have to live, Steph, the sea in which we all swim. Driftwood, Stefan remembers, driftwood in the ocean. What are you getting at? In this country, we prioritize, celebrate the objectification of women while simultaneously condemning and even legally punishing women who have taken the nerve to take their lives or their sexuality into their own hands. Women speak out about the abuse they've received and are pilloried on television. Sex workers are forced to operate at great personal risk to themselves, while the men and women who run our media salivate over children. At every level, the message is the same. Women's bodies are not women's properties. How do you expect a young man to become like the men we induct into our program to reform out in the outside world when it is run by and run for men exactly like him? Men like your Aaron infest our culture, and at every level they grant permission to themselves and to those who follow in their footsteps to be as repulsive as they please. It is easy to be an abusive man in Great Britain, Steph. Horrifyingly easy. And it escalates with privilege. I believe Aaron himself sidestepped responsibility for his repeated exposures, did he not? Excused consequences on account of being wealthy, white, and male. Stefan nods. He's searching for a counter-argument, but all he has is torture is wrong, actually. Nothing in his education prepared him to have to support that statement, and in face of a reminder that Will beat up his younger brother, and others besides, it sounds like, he's less sure than ever he even wants to anymore. Imagine returning Aaron, as he is now, to the world. Can you really guarantee that he wouldn't backslide? Renege on his meager progress in a country that elevates behavior like his, excuses it, rewards it? Okay, Stefan says, maybe not, but not all men are like that. He groans as Beatrice interrupts him. Did he really just pull a not all men? And that would be a good point if we had all men in our basement, Steph. We do not. We are selective. She leans forward, smiling gently, adopting the air of a concerned guidance counselor. Steph, if I may be blunt, and everyone around me is constantly, so I believe I shall indulge. You are a woman. You have always been a woman, whatever your external appearance might suggest. You, therefore, have experienced masculinity, and particularly the kind of grasping, possessive, abusive masculinity that we have decided is appropriate to teach our young men as nothing but a curse, correct? An unpleasant and often entirely irrational system of behavior to which you have been expected to conform and uphold in others. Steph says, trying to control his reaction to being called a woman, having his womanhood recognized so casually, acknowledged so completely. Yes, I suppose. Would you agree that your compliance with masculinity has been, shall we say, coerced? Not something you would have chosen for yourself? Stefan nods, carefully avoiding getting lost in memories. Then I suspect that you will find it hard to believe how seductive it can be. Imagine that you are a boy. Masculinity, as expressed by the patriarchy, all the way from the repulsive man who currently occupies the office of the Prime Minister, down to your peers at school, your family, the men you see on television, tells you what you are. It dictates your behavior, lays out the rules around which you must structure your life, but in return it offers power. Power over other men, should you make yourself strong enough, power over women. By default, you are strong, it whispers to you, as you grow taller than the girls at your school. You are powerful, it tells you, as you get into your first fight. You deserve her, it insists as you look at a pretty woman at a bar or in the street. And to those who listen, it says, even if she refuses you, she is nonetheless yours. Take her. Stefan jumps a little when she raises her voice. Take her and do what you will with her, for it is your right. Most men, of course, are not so ruled by their desires that they will act on every impulse. And many men are capable of ignoring those messages entirely, filtering them, discovering a healthy masculinity inside the radioactive dust that infests our social atmosphere. But as you have seen, there are men who are overwhelmed by these messages, who are shaped by them so completely that there is practically nothing else left inside them. They are broken people. Excellent vessels for what did the absurd scientists with a honey fixation call it? The meme of masculinity. The infectious idea that burrows into the brain and takes over. The problem for these men is that masculinity, toxic masculinity, if you will, violent, virulent masculinity, is a seductive lover but an abusive husband. Once you are in its grip, you can never be strong enough, never exercise enough power, never hurt enough people. You find yourself trapped between two destinies. Some of these broken men, they despise themselves, they victimize others because they're too weak not to, and they loathe their weakness. Many of them manage to put up a front, brusqueness, belligerence, humor, but the self-hatred eats away at them, and eventually they'll be destroyed by it, consumed by the parasite. Others become nothing but the violence. They have contempt for their victims and admire only strength and cruelty. They are essentially monsters. The one who hates himself, who lives with the weakness and the guilt and the shame, even if he takes it out on others, he can be fixed, but only if he is willing to properly purge his masculinity, to confront his abuser, extract his parasite. The monsters, however, are irredeemable and must be dealt with accordingly. She rests her chin on her hand, drums her fingers against her lips. The program, in its early stage, is designed to tell us who among the boys we have taken in is a monster and who is a victim, who is lost and who can be saved, and also to a lesser extent who is malleable enough to accept the transformation and who is not. A difficult task at the best of times, and one that I'm currently complicating. Beatrice laughs. Your amateur meddling thus far has had little to no effect, but you can, I believe, be of use to us in the coming months. Stefan coughs. Of use to you? Yes, and please don't let my pleasant manner deceive you into thinking you have room to decline. As I said, you have used us. You used Pippa particularly to make her an accomplice in your torture. Make her hurt you. Made her stand there and watch as the nurse assaulted you. A very difficult weight to hang around the neck of someone as kind as she. That kind of carelessness comes with a price, Seth. You owe us. You owe Pippa. You owe me. Lanced with guilt, Stefan nods. Won't be a difficult job, Beatrice assures him, returning to her bright earlier tones. Mostly, you'll carry on as you are now, except as much as required to keep appearances, you'll be exempted from anything unrelated to your biomedical transition, which we will of course continue to provide for you, as we would have had your deception remain undiscovered. Thank you. You're quite welcome. But there will be times where it's particularly difficult for the boys, the true onset of their second puberties, for example, and our surgical interventions, the castration, the osteotomy, yes. And it is in these times that a positive example can work wonders. Someone who takes the changes with, if not pleasure, then without the sense of apocalyptic doom that invades even those who are ultimately saved by our methods. Someone who can talk them through their feelings, help them grow comfortable with their changing bodies. You'll be our Judas Goat. Judas Goat. It's an archaic term. Put simply, it's an animal kept in comfort, trained to lead other animals with the minimum of panic into the slaughterhouse. That's startlingly appropriate, actually, Stefan says, prompting another less appropriate laugh from Beatrice. You are inside the boys' trust, she says, still smiling. They view you as one of them, and as such, they will accept reassurances from you that would sound empty and self-serving from the rest of us. I also suspect there's nothing you weren't planning to do already. Your empathy for these boys is commendable. I doubt you would be able to witness your Aaron, for example, attempt in distress without attempting to help him. This is a lot to ask, Stefan says. Staying quiet is one thing, but helping you mutilate these people? My dear Steph, I am not asking. These are the new rules. If you comply, you will live in comfort, your transition will be paid for, and you will exit this house with the same rights and privileges afforded to all our young women. If you do not comply, you will leave this place in the same manner as Declan. Declan's washing out. Yes, he is a rapist, an unrepentant and persistent one. By his own testimony has he damned himself. But that's beside the point. This is not a negotiation. You have no hand to play. Do you know how many boys have passed through this basement? Would you care to venture a guess at how many of them are never seen again, in any form? Your disappearance, should it be required, would present no difficulty to me at all. I don't like to waste people, Steph, but I do require your compliance. You have ultimately the same choice that all our girls have to make at one time or another. Accept my methods or reject them. Stefan forces a few breaths, buries shaking hands in the folds of his duvet to keep himself from giving him away. That's no choice at all. Exactly, Beatrice says. And relax. You're getting everything you wanted. So, Steph Riley, do we have your cooperation? Steph, out of options, and quite possibly out of his mind, shrugs. Suppose we do. There. Now he's complicit, just like Christine. Magnificent. Beatrice brushes some imaginary crumbs off her skirt. I'm looking forward to seeing how you turn out. You'll have such pretty features buried under there. And as for your progress through the program and your influence on the other boys will make for an interesting case study. Oh, and don't worry about the nurse. I'm grateful that you helped bring her to my attention. She won't be bothering anyone again, thanks to you. What? What did you do to her? Beatrice contorts her mouth like a smile. I had her removed. The implication is clear. Stefan bites the inside of his cheek for a second and nods, complicit in that too. Now that is all. You have a new future to prepare for, and I have other tasks to accomplish tonight. Oh, yes, fine, Stefan says, hesitant, still imagining a dozen possible final fates for the nurse. He adds, sheepishly feeling like he should say something more. Thank you for the opportunity. Beatrice stands, smooths out her clothes, and steps over to the bed. She holds out a hand and a bland corporate smile. Welcome to the team. End of chapter 14.